Hi, I'm Danny Johnson. Welcome to the Danny Johnson Show. Are you a man who is feeling the pressure to provide? Are you feeling the pressure of our society that is just crouching in on you, sending you even crazy, confusing messages? And then, of course, you put the wives in the picture and the kids in the picture and church in the picture and work in the picture. There's so many things that can add so much pressure to a man. Maybe you're a wife or a girlfriend of a man who might be feeling an intense amount of pressure in the area of providing for the family, and you don't even know it. I hope that today we bring voice to this thing that is an underlying issue in most marriages and most financial categories that most of us are not really even thinking about. And so whether you're the wife of a husband who might be feeling this way, or you are that husband who is feeling this way, I'd love, first of all, to hear your comments. And if you are just joining us right now, the topic of today's show is men feeling pressure to provide financially. And so we did ask this question. We asked the men of our audience, do you feel intense pressure to provide for your family? Why do you feel that way? What would help alleviate that pressure? Now, again, I got to tell you, I feel so really bad about this, and I love this topic because I really was terrible to my husband, Hans, as a wife, especially in our very early years. I was horrible, and I would point out how he wasn't providing, and he wasn't providing enough, and how even what he was providing wasn't even enough to take care of groceries. And I mean, I was horrible. I would tell him what a loser he was, and it's terrible what I did. I'm telling you, it's really, really horrible. And I say all this because if you're doing this to your husband and you're always complaining about him not making enough, and if you have some big giant hole inside of your heart like I had in mine. I was that woman who had so much hatred from my past. I had so much bitterness from my childhood. I had so much hurt from my high school sweetheart that we ended up having a baby in high school and being rejected by him and his family, and my baby being rejected also. I think the pain from the Christian people in my life was so deep, so very deep. And that's what I brought into my marriage. And so my poor husband, who we had done something which I don't agree with. We lived together for 2.5 years before we got married. I wish we had not done that. But our lives was actually better. Like I was a nice girlfriend before we got married. And as soon as I became a wife, like I unleashed hell on him. And every bad thing that had happened to me by every bad man, including being molested when I was 3, every bad thing that happened to me by a violently abusive man who I thought was my father. It turned out that I was given up for adoption and met my real dad when I was 18. And so I had just so much baggage. And so my mouth just had no self-control. And even though I had given my life to my God and I had met the Savior, Jesus Christ, even though I had done that, I still was just this really hateful person inside, and I unleashed that all over my husband. So talk about adding pressure to a man. And I've also watched that oftentimes the wives, without knowing it, they don't even know that they're doing it, are making their husbands feel like they cannot provide enough for her, that he can't make the cut of being that provider. And so even when they see some of these other men, like for example, my husband today, who's a financially independent multimillionaire, he's a businessman, it's not who he started out to be. I'm telling you right now, he was broke when I married him. And it took a long time for him to find his way and to be able to find his groove. And he did a lot of things that he hated, he didn't like to do for a living to provide for the family. And again, with a wife who I made lots of money. And there were times where it was like, I'm done, man. I had a nervous breakdown. I tried to kill myself. He saved my life. And so here because of the emptiness that was inside of me, I was looking to him to somehow fulfill me. And then so if you're that guy that, that now it's like, man, I don't feel like I can make the cut to provide for the family. And then again, it's like, man, you're looking at some of these other guys, these few guys that are out there who are still young. Hans is only 45 years old. Just blows my mind. So blows my mind. And, we have 5 kids, we have 8 grandkids, and he has a very successful life, and he has a very happy marriage. And yet, so when another guy might look at that guy and go, gosh, man, I will never be able to provide for my wife like that. I want to encourage both of you today that if if you're feeling like you have to, I want you to question that. And if you are the wife and you're pushing your husband because of the emptiness that's in you, and you try to solve your emptiness with shopping, or you try to solve your emptiness with competing with other wives, and I want a nicer house, I want a new couch, I need new drapes, right? I want the new latest and greatest appliance, I want to be able to buy as many clothes as I want to, I want my kids to have new school clothes for school that's coming up, I want them to have the best backpacks, I want them to be in the best Christian school, all of this stuff that just adds pressure to this poor man. And so we asked this question, and I feel like you and I are going to get the chance to learn something today that I think is really, really important. But before I read the comments, I want you to hear this. According to Huffington Post, men are twice as likely to feel a burden to provide for the family financially than women. Well, of course. The wife is the helpmate. I mean, this is the way we were wired. She's actually to be cared for, and she's to help to care for the whole family. But it's not her primary burden is not to care for to carry the whole load financially for the entire family. So that is like, duh. Well, Huffington Post wrote about it. Must be right. Well, it's like genetically right, and at least in my opinion. An article by Global News reports that devastating financial losses are a major threat to a man's sense of self-worth. Suicide rates among men spike after major financial crises. A study at Northern Illinois University found that job loss was synonymous with a hit to a man's masculinity. I've been living with the same man for 27 years. And I can tell you that last statement in my personal experience is true. I have also worked with thousands of men over my last 30 years of business experience. And I can tell you that when a man undergoes a financial loss, a business loss, a financial failure, it really, really is almost like a direct hit attack against his masculinity. And so we asked this question from our audience, and we asked the guys especially, and I want you to hear what they said. We've got Tim who says this. He says, I tried to be this guy for years and that I wasn't. This was to combat what I thought was false humility or wimpy. It created this macho garbage some men think they need to have because I went to these men's meetings about being a man and about a masculinity in the Christian world. Not knocking it all, but it just did not help with the issues I was struggling with. Also, my wife Timber and I experienced a lot of healing last weekend in Dallas. They were at First Steps to Success, the last event that took place in Dallas. He says, my marriage is just almost like when we first met and it's on fire again. But I know it takes work and not just some experience over a week away from home. Not to dishonor my wife, she apologized for not letting me be the man in certain areas, and that has already helped to bring healing. So isn't that interesting? So here's a guy who was taught in the Christian world amongst the Christian men's meetings on how to be, this, to put on that kind of pressure and he, like he said, this macho garbage that some men think that they have to have. And yet he's feeling like he didn't get the help that he needed there. And that, that's always a question. I want you and I to have a discussion about that, by the way. And by the way, if you're watching this right now and you're a husband or a wife, or you're a guy that feels that insane pressure to be able to provide, and you feel like you're not going to make the cut, I want you to tell me why you feel that way, and tell me what would help you to feel like you can. I want to learn from you. I really, really do. And I've been studying men for a long time on purpose because I really wanted to get to know the man I lived with. And of course, he's the main subject that I've been studying, but I've been just studying men. Even as I was raising men, we have 3 sons and 2 daughters. And so I knew these little boys who are incredibly rambunctious and very creative as well as destructive, that had, they're going to be men one day. And I knew I was raising men. And so I wanted to learn and discover and uncover, what is a man really all about? Who is he? What's inside him? What makes him tick? How does he think? What pressures does he have? How can we help to form the minds of these young men that we were raising on how to be great men one day? And so I really want to learn from you. I really, really do. And if you are a wife married to a man who has felt that pressure, what have you done to help relieve him of that pressure? And is the answer really get a job for her? Is that really the answer? Or is there more to it than her just making money? Here's what Eric says, and this is intense. I'm just really, really blessed by Eric's comment here. He says, I've spent more than half of my life under that pressure, doing my best, raising kids, taking care of an ill wife, keeping a roof over our heads, fixing that roof and other parts of the house frequently, putting food on the table, clothes on the backs, paying child support for my oldest, and with the prospect of being my parents' care provider, they're still in decent health, but with one just turning 87 and the other reaching 78 later this year, it won't be easy. And I got to tell you, even with prayer, I'm tired. Sorry. Have you ever felt tired like that? I'm exhausted reading that. Have you ever seen it from his perspective? Have you ever seen it? You know, it's so sad. Wives, we have a tendency of only seeing our perspective. And largely, we do not put ourselves in our husband's shoes. All we see from our little perspective is what he's not doing, the things he needs to change, what could make everything better. And I hear it from wives all the time. If only he could come on my side, if only he would join me in this, if only he would support me more in this. All the while, are we actually giving support? Or are we just expecting it? And so as I'm reading this, like, oh, man, it brought tears to my eyes. This word, even with prayer, I'm tired. Have you ever been so emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, and financially exhausted that you just want to throw in the towel? I have. He says, what would alleviate the pressure? Far too often, what I feel would alleviate the pressure would be to chuck all of it and split. Can you blame him? You can't blame him, can you? May not sound Christian-like, but it's an internal discussion that happens more and more frequently with myself. I could tell you that better, at least more livable housing and more cash would help, but honestly, that would be more than likely just a short-term Band-Aid. Still wouldn't help being tired of it all. I know it's an awkward silence, but I hope you're thinking. Here's one thing I know. I have not said thank you enough. I haven't. I haven't said thank you enough. We should say thank you more. You see, that weekly paycheck just starts to become expected. And whenever we have an expectation, we become entitled. The husband, the protector, the provider, the priest of the household. Sadly, our culture is picking them apart like crazy. Sadly, the church has emasculated them greatly, have wimpified them. They're not the warriors. They're not encouraged to be the warriors that King David was, Joshua was, Gideon was. Largely, they've been wimpified by the messaging through our church. They've been confused on who they are, not celebrated. They've been wimpified by our modern technology. There's a very small group of men that are actually doing physical labor anymore. So many of them are stuck in offices with women, behind computers, sitting down as their bodies deteriorate. Their bones, their muscle deteriorates. Worse than that, their minds. The warrior has been wimpified. And then he goes home to a wife who's complaining because she doesn't have enough money to be able to buy the new shoes that her girlfriend got, or that her friends are going on a vacation and they can't afford it. Meaning she can't afford the vacation, but they get to. Little does she know that the neighbors are like in debt up to here and fighting like crazy and can't afford it either, and they're being stupid with their money. So I want today that if you're a man, please teach us. We want to be better wives. We want to be better women. We want to be better mothers. So please teach us and write down in the comments. Tell us, like, what could alleviate some of that pressure? What could change? I know for me, when I realized I was doing this to Hans, it was very obvious that I needed to like deal with my own emotional crap, and I needed to stop putting it on him, and I needed to start seeing things from his perspective. I needed to start saying thank you more, and really appreciating how he provides for us and how he works so hard to do that, and all the stuff that he has to put up with all day, every day in order to do that. The fight and the battle that he has to work through every day, all day. You know, so many women take for granted they have a husband that actually works versus one that's just given up. He's like, forget it. I'm staying home. I'm not doing anything. And so like we just have this expectation. Well, that's what he's supposed to do, so you better do it. So please tell us, is it encouragement? Is it gratitude? You know, and then think about it. The kids, like, are the moms teaching the kids to be honorable and respectful of the father? Through her example, and also like through training and teaching exactly how that looks, what that looks like and how to do it. Are the kids thanking dad for protecting, for providing? Is that happening? So, and by the way, and if you are that woman who like, you feel like you've figured this out and your husband has like, you know, told you like how the things that you do that help him to feel great as a man and help him to be motivated to continue to do what he does, like write it right here in the comments. I want you to tell us, because we need to learn from each other on this. Marriages are heading for a divorce. And when there is a divorce, it's very difficult for wealth to be created. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it's much harder. Kids are being torn, shattered. Their soul is shattered as mom and dad break up. We can prevent this by learning from each other's failures and learning from each other's successes. So bottom line, I think we need to become a stronger people. We're going to do it by learning from each other and really recognizing, hey, gosh, have I like even spent 5 seconds to try to figure out and to find out how my partner is feeling? I remember when Hans used to share how he felt, I would take it personal. Well, gosh, well, then I need to do this and I need to change that. And I would take it personal. I would get so mad and it would start a fight. Versus just letting him share it, getting it off of his chest, letting him speak it out. Because we all say things that we don't mean, and we have feelings. And when we bottle up those feelings, then, my friend, then they explode in bad places, and it's just never good. So please do this. I really want us to engage together. And we're going to read these comments. I want you to know that. I'm going to read these comments. I want to see what you have to say about this. And also, like, share this video. Share this show today. Because somebody needs to hear this. Somebody, a man maybe that's under a crazy amount of pressure. And there might be a woman who's adding the pressure to him. And hopefully it provokes a conversation that could be healthy. And could provoke some apologies. And if we're supposed to be his helpmate, then it's even asking, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? And I promise you this, a man feeds a lot on the encouragement of his wife. That when she believes in him, there's nothing he cannot do. That she's a safe place for him to unload what's going on inside of him and not make like decisions and try to come up with an action plan. No, he's not looking for you to fix him. He's just looking for like a place, a safe place to just rant if that's what he needs to do and then be done with it. So anyway, I hope this helped. Thanks so much for joining us today. This is Danny Johnson. Looking forward to talking to you tomorrow. Bye.
If this episode was an encouragement to you, go to DannyJohnson.com and share it with your friends now. You never know who else needs to hear it. This has been The Danny Johnson Show. Join us every weekday at 7 a.m. for more insights that will help you